The Pittsburgh Steelers have made many roster changes within the last few days. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they signed 3 players to their practice squad, they released 2 players from their practice squad, they trade for 2 players, and they also get 1 player returning off a suspension. But first, before we get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is their Week 10 roster update and every transaction they made this week. And let's start off with the suspension, because Cameron Sutton, he was suspended this season for 9 games. And now in Week 10, he's coming back. And that means that he has to be activated to the 53-man roster. Good thing they had an open roster spot, and since he's returned off a suspension, he just goes right to 53 without having to cut a player from the main roster. So Cameron Sutton, he will be back, and now it gives the Pittsburgh Steelers another depth piece at the cornerback position, and specifically the slot cornerback spot with him and Beanie Bishop Jr. as of now. I'll get more into it later in the video, but that is a transaction the Pittsburgh Steelers made from the suspended list to the 53-man roster. Now, let's talk about the other transactions made, because the Steelers made 2 trades just at the trade deadline. They traded for Mike Williams of the New York Jets at wide receiver, and they also traded for Preston Smith, an edge rusher from the Green Bay Packers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have those 2 players on the 53-man roster right now, and they'll have huge impacts on the team this season in the roles that they play. I'll get more into it later in the video, but those are the transactions made via trade. But since the Pittsburgh Steelers made those transactions, they didn't have 3 open roster spots. I believe they had 2. So the 1 player who they had to cut to get those players on is, you look at Rooney Williams. He was released from the 53-man roster, and he is a player who had a huge impact in winning the Pittsburgh Steelers last game. If we remember, Calvin Austin, his punt return touchdown, when he returned it deep for a 70-plus yard touchdown, the key block on that play was Rooney Williams in the special teams game. He had the key block to allow Calvin Austin to get the outside on the punt and then use his speed. Without that block, the punt return touchdown more than likely would not happen. It all set it up, and Rooney Williams, he was a huge impact on that game, but now he's waived from the 53-man roster because of the trades and the suspension coming back. So Rooney Williams, he is now not on the roster any longer. He more than likely, if he clears waivers, will end up back on the practice squad, but he is released from the team. Now, let's look at another player released. This player was released from the practice squad. This is your practice squad update now. You look at Andy Isabella. He was released from the practice squad. He's a former second-round pick of the Arizona Cardinals. The Pittsburgh Steelers assigned him to their practice squad last week, but it was short-lived because now he's released from it, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have signed 3 players to their practice squad in replace of Andy Isabella, and these are the players that they assigned this week to the practice squad. Those players are tight end Matt Sokol and defensive tackle Dominique Davis, and also offensive tackle Dylan Cook. So those are the players the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed to the practice squad. And those players have been on and off the practice squad as well. But Dylan Cook is a newly added player to the practice squad. He was actually on injury reserve all of the season, and then he was designated off of injury reserve last week, but the Pittsburgh Steelers did not move him to the 53-man roster, so they just waived him, cut him from the team, and then he cleared waivers, and now he's on the practice squad. So Dylan Cook, he is a player who spent the 2023 season on the 53-man roster, but he didn't see any game action. So Cook entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent, signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers following the 2022 NFL Draft. He spent the 2022 season on Tampa's practice squad, and now he spends this season on the Pittsburgh Steelers injury reserve list and the practice squad. So he hasn't really seen much game action in his career, even though he has been in the league for 3 seasons now. So Dylan Cook on the practice squad. If the Steelers suffer any injuries offensive tackle, he more than likely will be a game day elevation. But as of right now, he just stays there. Also, looking at two players, like I said, the Steelers signed to the practice squad. Matt Sokol, Dominic Davis, they've been on off the practice squad all season. So I'm not going to get too much into depth with them because I have covered them in other roster updates. But let me just go through a little bit quickly. Davis, he originally signed with the New York Jets as undrafted free agent following 2020 NFL draft. He was out of the NFL for 2 seasons before signing with the Cincinnati Bengals in 2022. He spent time on their practice squad and their active roster during the past 2 seasons, and now he's with the Pittsburgh Steelers on their practice squad. Sokol, it's a second stint on the practice squad for the Steelers, like I said, and he was originally signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers in training camp, and he was with the Los Angeles Chargers following 2019 NFL draft. And then he was with the Chargers, Jacksonville, Detroit Lions, Patriots, and Chargers. So he spent time with a lot of teams. Now he's with the Pittsburgh Steelers on and off the roster. Practice squad, that roster that is. So these are the updates for the Pittsburgh Steelers just this week in terms of the transactions made. And now let's get more into depth with the first few I named. So let's double back to Cameron Sutton, because Cameron Sutton was suspended this season. He was signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason with a lot of drama surrounding him. The Steelers took a chance on him, and now they waited out his suspension. Cameron Sutton dealt his suspension with not practicing with the team, not being with the team, and now he's officially back at practice, back on the 53-man roster. We're still going to have to wait and see if he is an active player on game day. More than likely he should be. If they waited this long for suspension, I don't see why they wouldn't use him if they didn't feel as though he's a capable player. So Cameron Sutton, he's a player who can make an impact on this team. Because when we looked at the Steelers' slot cornerback position, that was one of the biggest holes that we've seen on the roster. But then Beanie Bishop just the last few weeks started playing really good, getting interceptions, things like that. But earlier on in the season, it was a struggle. So Cameron Sutton, he's a veteran. He's been the best slot cornerback in the league before. So if he could get back to that role, I don't see why he will not be a cornerback for the Steelers who will actually be useful and be used on this defense. And eventually he may even take over Beanie Bishop's role. Who knows? Or maybe just both of them being utilized at the same time. So that's Cameron Sutton, and he'll have impact on this team, I believe. And now looking at the trades, like I said, the Steelers trade for Mike Williams. He's been practicing this week. More than likely, he will be playing. George Pickens, some other players spoke on him, saying he's a big body receiver. He can make tough catches on the outside. And George Pickens specifically said he's going to give the defense coordinators of the other teams problems with himself, George Pickens, obviously, and then Mike Williams on the outside being big play threats. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they trade for him. He'll have impact on this team probably this week, being the number 2 option at the wide receiver position, or number 3, depending on how Russell Wilson targets him. And then you also look at the defensive side of the football. We traded for Preston Smith. Preston Smith will have an impact because Nick Herbig more than likely will be missing this game. So he may be the outside linebacker number 3 for this game and actually get playing time because of the injury to Nick Herbig. When Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt need to rest, expect to see Preston Smith and maybe Moon at the outside linebacker spots this week. So those players should have impacts right away for this team and get playing time right away as well. Other than that, you look at Ronnie Williams, that may have been a surprise cut, especially after just making a huge impact this past week. It seems like Nicole Pruitt just stays being injured. He has another injury this week, another knee injury. He suffered a knee injury earlier in the season and he was out for like 4 weeks. He has another knee injury, hasn't practiced this week, so he may be out again. So it's kind of interesting that the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to keep him on the roster, but Ronnie Williams, who has had an impact on this team in the past and also is a key special teams guy, just got cut from the team. So Ronnie Williams and all the other practice squad additions, those are the transactions made for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. And let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on each one of these. Who do you think will have the biggest impact? Do you believe Cameron Sutton will get playing time this week and be an active player and eventually take over as a starting slot position? How do you feel Mike Williams, Preston Smith will do? And also the release of Ronnie Williams and the signing of all those practice squad guys, like I said. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about each of them. And also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, reports. I cover the roster updates like once a week, just giving you your weekly transactions and everything else I cover for Pittsburgh Steelers as well. So stay tuned to the channel, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all later. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.